This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money, you sorry
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.
Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
Head over our contest page, enter for your shot to win a pair of early screening passes for the new DC Studios film Superman in theaters July 11th. Enter today, KFAN.com, keyword contest, KFAN.com, keyword contest.
Well, it's June 24th. Why not talk a little college football? Talk a little college sports in general. July 1st, I think, is a big day in the college sports world. We'll talk about all of it for the next hour. We'd love some talkbacks. If you're a college football fan, college sports fan, Gopher sports fan, the Parent and Spare podcast crew has joined me in studio. Chip Scoggins from the Star Tribune and Football Across Minnesota and any other special project that he has. How are you, Chipper?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's great to see you. Thanks for making this happen today. And the guy who we had on in emergency fashion last night at 6 o'clock, Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com. It's been an interesting 24 to 48 hours for you, I would imagine, young Burnsy.
It's been a very busy month, I'll say that. I feel very underdressed next to my dad here in his best.
Do I look good? I clean up.
We should have turned on the cameras.
Oh, boy.
Should have turned on KFAN.com/watch.
I actually have a collared shirt on today.
You're looking good?
Yeah, we're having the annual Star Tribune high school sports banquet.
They did not do that back in my day.
No, we didn't, and I wish we would have. You would have gotten an invite for sure.
I doubt that.
You might have won an award.
Do you even include people from the East Metro, or is that just a river thing?
I think it's a river thing.
You notice how he did. Yeah. Notice how I didn't answer that question.
I think this would be the first year where it used to be the All Metro banquet, right? So it'd just be.
Yeah, but now you're the Minnesota Star Tribune.
We are the Minnesota Star Tribune, so we have kids coming from all over the state. Well, it makes sense because I remember a couple years ago, we had the banquet, but we didn't have Corey Parrish. We didn't have Isaac Osama. I mean, your best football player and your best basketball player in the state that year were from out of the Metro. So I'm happy that we're including all the entire state. And so it's always a cool event. We get, 100 or so high school athletes that come in and celebrate their achievements from the year. It's a really cool night.
Well, some good it did me in 2001.
Yeah.
In 2000.
I'll put you on the Mount Rushmore.
That's all right.
I'll put you on there.
I don't need any more plaques or trophies. They're collecting dust. Yeah.
You got one.
Yeah, we'll see enough of them.
But outstate, what a great transition, because we are back in that again. And one of the reasons why this is fortuitous, and we didn't plan it this way, I probably could have if I was paying attention, but the reason you were on Burnsy yesterday is that Gopher football got more great news, because it's been kind of a heater for PJ Fleck and company the last few weeks. That Roman Voss from Jackson County Central, which I don't think is in the Classic Lake Conference or the North Suburban, the number 1 rated kid, high school player in the state of Minnesota, has committed to PJ Fleck and the University of Minnesota over the Alabama Crimson Tide. Another outstate kid coming to Dinkytown. Your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I don't pretend to know the southern Minnesota like the back of my hand. We can call it Jackson, Minnesota. I've also seen Lakefield, Minnesota. I know you spent a lot of time down in that area back when you were about 18 to 21 years old or so.
I've driven through Jackson a lot on the way to Rock Rapids, Iowa, I'll have you know. So there you go. Brett Blakemore, the Iowa native, nods. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. I know, and I know that Jackson County had a good rivalry with Glencoe Silver Lake back in the day in section football. Because my old roommate, who I just referenced last segment, Chad Kaz, had his football career ended by Jackson County back in like 1999. So our yearbooks are wide open right now, Bernsey. I'm very familiar with Jackson County.
Well, Jackson County Central has been very good at football, sounds like, for a very long time. And Roman Voss has been starting for them since, I believe, he was in 8th grade. And that's where, if you go back through the history of this recruitment, it's one where I would tell you that maybe PJ Fleck and his staff have made up the most amount of ground, where they were his first offer about a year ago. But I think a lot of people thought at the time, from talking with people in that area, that he was either going to go to Iowa or Nebraska when they eventually came into the fold. And then Minnesota coaches, tight end coach Eric Kaler, the offensive coordinator Greg Harbaugh, and then head coach PJ Fleck, they kept battling. And so that's where when the Iowa and Wisconsins came in, that was one wave. He went more national here during the spring when places like Oklahoma, USC, Alabama, which, if you know anything about Alabama now, they've got a lot of connections to that part of the state with Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and what they did out at Sioux Falls. And so Minnesota just hung in there. And then he took official visits to both places and then choosing Minnesota. Now, he does it all at Jackson County. He plays quarterback. He plays receiver, linebacker. I mean, he's an outstanding basketball player as well. He has over 1,000 points, and I think he got that when he was a sophomore. Both Alabama and Minnesota see him as a tight end. But to go toe-to-toe with Alabama again for PJ Fleck here, because this isn't the first time, because just a couple of weeks ago, they beat out Alabama for a tailback out of Texas by the name of Ryan Estrada, and then back during the portal period, they got an offensive lineman named Khalid Tafai, who also saw Alabama. So it's been a little interesting here for PJ Fleck going toe-to-toe with them.
No notes. That's all off the top of your head. I had you see me peek over and like, how's he getting all these
This guy knows his recruiting stuff,
That
right?
is incredible. You have not been drinking rum runners lately. I know that. Chipper, if you include Jackson Howard, it's 5 straight years the number one player in Minnesota has been a Gopher. If you don't include Jackson Howard, who's going to have a big part of the season this year, we think, on the defensive line, 3 straight years that the number one player have committed to the Gophers out of high school. The second straight year, the top 3 kids in the state will all be Gophers. You've covered this team specifically for a really long time, going back to when I was not at the Star Tribune All-Metro banquet. What does that tell you, or how do you kind of process what's happened here the last couple of years?
Yeah, I say the importance of this can't be undersold, because this state, I don't think, is ever going to be one of those states that produces 20 Division I kids that are Big Ten level.
No, not especially with the way that they produce basketball, and maybe more importantly here, high-level hockey players.
Correct. And so if you're, let's say, Burns, you probably know better than me, but let's say 8 Big Ten or Power 4 level.
Roughly over the last 5 years, that's probably a good number.
On average. Well, if you miss the top 2, that's devastating. Right, it's devastating that you're missing on those, and it's more obviously the talent we saw when you can get a Coy Parrish, how that can change things, and he can come here and make an immediate impact. But even more so than that, I think it's optics. Right, it's the optics of kids are always leaving, and PJ says this all the time: cultural sustainability, and there's many tentacles of that, like how that plays out. But I think you're seeing it in recruiting. I think these kids are growing up knowing him. They know his program. They know his personality. They know what to expect. They're on campus a lot. They're the coaching staff, PJ and his coaches, are in their schools. They've been there. Is this year 9 coming up?
Coming up on year 9.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. We are all getting older. But this is part of that cultural sustainability where these kids know him from an early age, and they know Gopher football. And so, and I do think, I don't know that this is a huge factor, but I do think there's, kids want to get away. Not every kid, but a lot of kids want to get away and go to college. I think that helps with outstate kids, that this is for Isaac Osama. This is going away to college. For Coy Parrish, this is going away from his hometown. And so I think that probably factors in a little bit more than anything. I think these kids grow up and they know the program now. And I think they're seeing that there is a track record of putting kids in the NFL, which is always high on their list. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at every year, the number of guys that are going, not just getting drafted, but drafted high. I think that's a big part of it. So, yeah, it's the fact that they're able to keep these kids home and show them that you don't have to go to Ohio State or Alabama or other places and have a great career and, make money.
Right.
Through NIL and revenue sharing. That's a part of it, too.
Yeah, I want to get to that part of it, but you hit on where I wanted to go next, Chip, and you're a good person to ask about this because you do football across Minnesota. You do special projects. You do put miles on your car and stay at Americans all over our great state of Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Because you hit on something that I do think has changed the last few years where 10, 15 years ago, a kid from Jackson County probably is going to Nebraska or Iowa or South Dakota State, North Dakota State, right? Like schools might not be getting down that area. You're not looking in Esco. You're not looking in Cherry. As a guy who spent some time in there covering these players, because you went up to see Coy, you went up to see Isaac, how much do you feel like that outstate, coming to the big city or going away for college did impact these guys?
100%. I felt it particularly with Isaac. Because he hadn't committed yet. When I went and visited Coy, he had committed, but Isaac hadn't. And I was having lunch. He was at a shoot around or something. I was having lunch with his mom, and we were talking about how their family is really close, and they go to all the games, and the aunts, and not just the brothers and sisters, but aunts, uncles, cousins. I mean, the game I went to that night, I think they had like 40 family members there, and I think. One might have been his grandfather hadn't ever been on a plane but I left there thinking he's going to Minnesota, like 100% going to Minnesota because this is getting away. And I think if, you don't have to get on a plane to go watch your son compete, but it's if they want the experience of, hey, I want to get away from mom and dad or, be farther than 20 miles or 25 miles away from home. I think that does play into it. This is, traveling a certain distance to get to school. So I think there is something to it. I don't know that's the number one factor, but I think it's probably part of the decision-making process.
Chip Scoggins and Ryan Burns are here until the top of the 5 o'clock hour. If you have any questions, you can hit the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line 64686. We have a bunch that we got on Twitter earlier that we'll get to as well. I'd love some talkbacks as well that we can bump back with the next couple of segments. Go to the iHeartRadio app, hit the microphone icon. You've got 30 seconds to ask your question to the Pair and the Spare pod. It can be Gopher football, college football, Big Ten football, whatever you want it to be. We will try to get to as many of those between now and 5 o'clock. Burnsy, tell me, Chip mentioned, PJ being here now 9 years, and he hasn't had every assistant coach all that time, right? Because guys are, getting poached. You and I have talked about it on Gopher Football Sunday and the Pair and the Spare forever. But there's been a consistent Gopher coach presence in Minnesota high schools. I feel like really specifically the last 4 or 5 years with their, what do they call it? Minnesota Blitz.
I think that's what they coined it. Yeah.
And so what is that? And how much do you feel like just the overall emphasis? It seemed like a staff-wide blitz. That's why they call it that they are in there every single year, whether you have a player or not. It seems like their Gopher coaches are going.
Yeah, I think it's twofold to where you think about these kids that are committing now. They're 15, 16, 17 years old. Well, think about the recent history of Gopher football now. These kids grew up in a time where it was the Jerry Kill years into Tracy Clay, and then obviously now PJ Fleck. They didn't grow up in the dumpster fire that was the Tim Brewster era. They have largely seen a Gopher football team be very competent here, which they've seen it. Their parents have seen it. The talk around whatever town they're from has seen it, that the Gophers have won some games. Now, they could always win more games. We've spent a lot of time on this podcast over the last few years lamenting the lack of Big Ten West titles. But that being said, it's been largely competent. And so when you look kind of going forward to it, it's if you just put in the time and you look at the 3 4-star kids in the state, that number 1, number 2, and number 3 players. We've talked a lot about Roman Voss. You've also got an offensive lineman from Ricori named Andrew Trout. Minnesota was his first offer, got him committed.
Ricori also not in the Classic Lake Conference.
How about Forest Lake?
Forest Lake, I mean, that's kind of the metro. That's closer.
We would consider a metro, probably. Yeah.
Wherever you are, if you want to be outstate in Forest Lake, you can be. If you want to be metro, you can
That's
be.
right,
I think you can decide if you're Forest Lake.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, we could spend the next 10 minutes talking about what's outstate versus what's metro versus where northern Minnesota starts compared to the 3-hour ride.
And central. Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. But they were the first offers for so many of these guys. And I think being early and then cultivating that relationship so that when some of these national offers start to come in, and it helps that for Howie Johnson, who is a defensive tackle from Forest Lake, committed to Minnesota, 4-star, it's 45 minutes to probably get down to campus if you got some traffic there going down 35. From Ricori, it's a little bit. And then you get to go away for college. So I think that's where, to Chip's earlier point, I think that's where they're benefiting from this, where if the kid's from Edina or Minnetonka or wherever, it's not necessarily going away. And that's where we've seen over the years, those kids could either end up at Iowa, Wisconsin, where 3-4 hour drive, then you get to get away from mom and dad, but mom and dad can still make the easy drive or flight to wherever that Big Ten game is. But Fleck and his staff have done a much better job across the state.
And you mentioned getting on these kids early. I mean, didn't he just offer a kid coming into 9th grade? And
that's the earliest offer I've seen.
And I'm sure people looked at it as like, really? That's early? It's like, well, not really, because someone else is going to do it probably, right? I mean, you want to be, it's a balancing act between what's too soon or too early for a kid versus being late and having someone else come in and be the first team that offered him. But that young man's going to have 4 years of being on campus and knowing the coaches and all that goes into that. So there's a strategy behind it too, right?
There is.
So there are 2 texts that we automatically get. Actually, there's a new one. There's a new one that we're getting now that I think is funny. And I want to focus more on the second one. But the first one, as you know, Bernsey, and I want you to remember this.
Can I take a sip of what I assume they think is my maroon and gold colored Kool-Aid here?
Well, even though, how long have you covered recruiting specifically for GopherIllustrated.com?
15 years or so.
Yeah, we are approaching year 15. You and I started the same year, year 15. It's June 24th. When's National Signing Day?
First week of December, Justin.
That's a long time.
Is that true?
They can decommit.
You don't say.
So I want you don't have it here. I'm going to lend you a piece of my paper. Write this down in case you need to know. I'm going to actually hand it to you.
All right. Let me get the pen here.
It's a long time. They can decommit. And other teams are going to get commitments too.
This is the first time I've heard of this.
I know. So I want you to know that.
Are you kidding me?
But here's my other favorite negative one that is now coming out. And somebody tweeted it at me yesterday because, it's a big day when the number 1 recruit in the state says they're coming to your school, right?
Sure.
Even if he does decommit, or by the way, he can come here and play and transfer. That's the other thing. Like all of this is ephemeral, right? But when you beat out Alabama, that's a big deal. Like we should spend some time talking about it. Like it's okay if you're a Gopher fan to feel good about all of that. You shouldn't feel defensive about it. Somebody tweeted at me, well, you can't talk about winning over Alabama until you start talking about the money discrepancy and the payroll and how much did Minnesota offer to pay him as opposed to Alabama. And I'm like, first of all, okay, maybe that's true. But second of all, why is that a bad thing? If you did get, and who knows if that's even true, but just basically, well, they must have paid more than Alabama. That's the only way you can do it. I just think it's amazing to me. Here's our observers and fan argument, Chipper, that we always talk about. How many observers want to find ways to just tear it down in less than 12 hours of the announcement being, well, you got to talk about the money. Otherwise, it's not part of the conversation. Like, congrats to Dinkytown athletes for stepping up and getting a player. Well, if that's true, if that's the only reason,
that's a problem.
We should be saying, yeah, good job. You worked the system to find a player that you wanted. And if it is even about money, which I'm guessing it's probably not, you can talk to a lot. But anyway, that's a new one that I hadn't gotten until yesterday.
Alabama getting broke boyed by Minnesota would be an interesting argument to make. As someone who deals in this every day of his life and has for, as we just discussed, over a decade, I haven't heard of that one too often.
It just cracked me up.
Yeah, look, do I think the money between Minnesota and Alabama was much more similar than it would have been 2 or 5 years ago? Absolutely, which is a credit to Minnesota's NIL collective, Dinkytown athletes, plus the House settlement, which is going to be going through here very, very shortly. I think the payments start next week. What are we thinking that Minnesota came in with? This isn't some Tennessee Vols, Chip Scoggins, McDonald's bag, of which...
Don't hate the player.
That's a true story. I've heard many a time.
Don't hate the player.
Yeah.
While you're wearing your khakis, that sentence coming out there, that's unbelievable.
I mean, I was born August of 92. I know all about the Minnesota sports fan experience in this market.
Right.
So if we can't, if a fan can't celebrate a moment like they've had in the last 24 hours when we're talking 5-7 years ago, we're seeing guys like Riley Mahlman, Joe Alt, Bryce Benhart, all offensive linemen, highly ranked, leave the state, and I think all of them are going to end up being NFL draft picks. I think Mahlman's back for, Brett could correct me, I think his 6th year at Wisconsin.
Brett's sleeping back there. We lost Brett. He golfed today. He's tired. I told him it'd be an easy day, and he clearly took that to heart. Yeah. If I didn't know better, I thought it was Zach Halverson there. How far you were leaned back in your chair there. But yeah, Riley Mahlman, Lakeville. You got it. Yeah.
So if we can't celebrate the wins there, I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I got a couple of great texts late in the show yesterday. It was just like, I just want to invite those people to my birthday party. I just want to, because they seem like just a hell of a time. I mean, just sunshine and roses on a beautiful Minnesota day.
Well, you were just showing me your itinerary. You've already booked a trip for Pasadena at this point.
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to read this text. Definition of a casual here. So the question, it's truly a question and not necessarily a criticism. Is the expectation for a football program to be competent at this point? Can they be more than that, or with the landscape now, trying to split with Iowa, Wisconsin, win a few of the gimmies, get smoked by the big dogs, or is the bar higher? Or is there more there? What do you guys think about what reasonable expectations should be for a program like Minnesota here in this new era?
Yeah, I think the whole, or a lot of the premise within the industry behind revenue sharing is that it will continue to bring some parity to the sport that is badly needed. I think we've seen it the last couple of years, really, when you look at the playoff, when you look at teams popping up. I think, and that goes hand in hand with the portal, right?
Yeah.
That between revenue share and transfer portal, you can improve your lot pretty quickly. You can pop up, you can fix holes. And so I think we're going to continue to see a leveling of the playing field where it's not just at the beginning of the year, here's your 4 teams that you think are going to win it. Now, the great teams are still going to be great. Those blue bloods are still going to be up there, but I think you're going to see more and more programs feel like they have a chance to, especially as the college football playoff goes from 12 and it's going to go to 16. I think it's going to open it up and be more accessible to more teams because of the portal and because of now. You're on equal playing field. Mark Coyle, the Gopher Athletic Director, is on record saying they're going to spend the full allotment, the full $20.5 million this first year, and it goes up. And so, in terms of that component, they can spend as much as Alabama, Penn State, USC, whoever. Now, the NIL is a different thing.
It certainly is.
That's a different thing. But in terms of the revenue sharing and what you can offer athletes there, you can devote whatever percentage you want to football. If you said we want to give 80% of that to our football program, that's up to you. Other schools are going to make the determination how much they want to give. And so I just think it's competent, competitive, whatever you want to call it. But I think there is an opportunity in this new landscape to make ground.
Yeah, the playing field for a team like Minnesota hasn't been as level as it has been, I think, in some time, with number one, the transfer portal, because with these kids' abilities to transfer whenever they want, these 4- and 5-star kids who used to just go sit at the SEC schools, wait their turn, they're not waiting their turn anymore.
Right.
And so if they just redshirt and they transfer, and you've seen Minnesota benefit from things like that, but it also just levels the playing field across the Big Ten and the SEC, where the top of the top can't hoard all the talent. It just starts to trickle down to the bottom, and the middle gets a lot more gray. And then you get into the house settlement where, to Chip's point, they're going to have an ability for, at least for football, my understanding is somewhere around $14 million or so is going to be paid to these football student athletes, which is going to be right in line with the rest of the Big Ten. Now, there's always going to be teams in the Big Ten that have more money than you, but if the margin becomes ever more small, that's where you look at the college football playoff last year, teams like SMU getting in, teams like Arizona State, and I mean, your texter's talking about getting the doors blown off them. Well, I remember a team coming in last year to Huntington Bank Stadium in Penn State who was, I believe, in the Final Four last year in the college football playoff, where The Gophers gave him the ball back.
I know. That fake punt.
With 6 minutes left, and the Gophers had all 3 timeouts, and they never got the ball back in a 1-point game.
The fake punt.
There's going to be 2 very difficult games that we can get into the schedule later on in the hour here about going to Columbus and going to play Oregon and their place, but there are opportunities for Minnesota to have a 2019 season now. They have to be a lot better in one-possession games than they were last year, but the margin is there, especially as they expand to 16. I mean, between the portal and now the house settlement, there are the expectation for me, Chip, isn't every year you should be on that conversation. It's every 3 years.
Yeah,
to get into that, occupy that 15th or 16th spot. Well,
you mentioned Oregon. It wasn't too many years ago where Bucky Irvin just got paid a big sum of money to go play. So you lost one of your best players.
Yeah,
that hasn't happened the last two or 3 years here.
Well,
where
the people on social media, Chip, have told me for the last 3 years since Darius Taylor committed to Minnesota and then Michigan came in that he was leaving. So Darius plays in 12 consecutive games last year, and I talked to him at the bowl game. What would you say to people who say I'm going to leave? And he's just like, do we have to do this every year?
Yeah.
Like Minnesota, I don't think will ever be the highest bidder in the room. But if you can just be competent, which they certainly have been, which is why they were able to retain Darius Taylor and Coy Parrish, and you go back a year before, Ariante Ursary, who became the highest drafted offensive lineman from this program in, I think, my lifetime since the early 90s. If you can just be in the ballpark, Minnesota's finding that you are going to retain more and more of your top talent.
You can hit the talk back on the iHeartRadio app if you have a question for Bernsey and Chip Scoggins, the Pair and Spare podcast crew hanging out for the rest of the hour. You can also go to the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line 64686. As we pause, we will mention some breaking news in the world of Timberwolves. No trade, but the NBA Board of Governors has unanimously approved the sale of controlling interest in the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Lynx from Glenn Taylor to Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez. The NBA board has approved it. The transaction is expected to close this week. Might talk about that with Luigi Lunani in the 5 o'clock hour, but the Lowry and A-Rod ownership tenure is official at the end of the week. Speaking of money, let's try to give you some.
The Fan and BigDeck.com going to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. The keyword this hour is cash. Keyword cash, KFAN.com, keyword cash.
More college football and Gopher football talk with the Pair and a Spare crew when we...
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money, you sorry
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
If you want to chime into what's happening in your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. So let us know what you have to say by texting that message to 64686. That is 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
Yeah, you can do that. There's a lot of texts we're going to try to get to here in the next 30 minutes or so with Ryan Burns and Chip Scoggins, 2/3 of the Pair and a Spare podcast, which you can hear quite a bit during the offseason, but every week during the college football season. Wherever you get your favorite podcasts, I suggest the iHeartRadio app. It's free, and it's very easy to use. Speaking of the iHeartRadio app, we also have some talkbacks we want to get to here before I've got some other toss-ups for our guy Bernsey and Chip. Can we hit the first one, Brett Blakemore?
Hey guys, so you hit on the fact earlier that a lot more Gophers have been going in the draft lately, especially some high draft picks in the first and second round. That obviously helps with recruiting. Does it also help knowing too, if these guys go to Ohio State or Alabama, there's a lot more competition for playing time, where now if you go to Minnesota, you have a high likelihood of getting drafted versus worrying about getting the playing time elsewhere. Thanks.
Bernsey? You're in the recruiting world. This is your baby. What do we think?
Yeah, I already know I'm going to get the text from Paul Rovnak when I get it wrong here, but I think it's been 6 straight NFL drafts where the Gophers have had a first or a second round pick. And I think that streak is going to continue next spring when Anthony Smith goes in that range after what I assume is going to be an all Big Ten season after he somehow didn't make the list with, I think, 11.5 tackles for loss last year. But I think it's a combination of you can show player development with NFL draft picks, with all conference teams. And then to the talkback's point there, you have an opportunity to likely play sooner here at Minnesota than you do at an Ohio State, than you do at an Alabama. Now, I will say for these 4-star recruits that are electing to stay home, they believe they can play anywhere. And that's why they're considering anywhere.
Right.
Now, I think the family aspect of that, in terms of, we've talked about whether it's Cherry, Minnesota, whether it's Lakefield, Minnesota, whether it's Esco, Minnesota, that's going away. And it's also for them, I think you're going to especially see this year at the bank. I mean, I've even seen it here throughout Gopher football practices when the public's able to show up. The amount of Coy Parrots jerseys that kids are wearing now. And then,
kids, Chip bought 4 of them for himself in all the different colors.
That's right.
Yeah, he'll go down as one of the most popular.
And so if you want to continue to, in this era, continue to build your brand, staying home and having these kids look up to you and wearing the Parrots jerseys or potentially the Jackson Howard or the Roman Voss or, again, name your player, I think that means a lot more to these kids because they can then look at the sideline or look up in the stands and see their jersey, which if they go to an Ohio State or they go to an Alabama, maybe they don't see that as much. So I think it's a combination, though.
Yeah, I think, I don't cover recruiting nearly as much as you have, but when I did, I think one of the 2 most important factors for kids was, when can I play? How soon can I play? How fast can I get on the court? Can I get on the field? And so if you're looking at it, is it going to be easier to get on the field at Ohio State or Minnesota? I mean, now I think Coy Parrish could go to Ohio State and be a great player there too right away. I mean, he's just that talented. But I think kids absolutely probably look at that. They probably look at, history, depth chart. But I think with Coy, I think he probably looked at, man, they've had to run a lot of safeties that went to the NFL, and that's a big deal.
Antoine Winfield, Tyler Nubin, or even, again, Roman Voss is the tight end. You look in the NFL right now. Brevin Spanford from St. Cloud just caught 9 passes for the Dallas Cowboys. Ko Keefe was a draft pick. He's still with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Nick Callerup is on an NFL roster right now from Wayzata. Imagine, I'm sure the pitch to him and his family was, you're the higher rated of the 3 of these guys. Imagine what we can do with you, and you're better Clay.
How much does Summer Splash help recruiting for all the northern schools? For those that don't know what Summer Splash is, what was it, 4 years ago? They allowed
summer official visits for football programs.
Where it used to be in the old days.
In my day, when I was...
It was December.
After the season, boat practice, it'd be snowing sideways, 10 degrees, and they may or may not be able to get into the Metrodome if it was being occupied by something else to show them, hey, here's where you're going to play. Sometimes they couldn't.
Right. But now they can come in the summer, and
it helps a lot.
I think all northern schools have loved that. I'm sure Iowa's liked it. I'm sure Wisconsin's liked it. And we know that the very Lake Minnetonka heavy PJ Fleck and Fleck family have enjoyed taking recruits out onto the boat on a June weekend.
Yeah, as someone who's been talking to recruits and their families for 15 years now, I cannot stress to you that I know the listener right now knows that Minnesota is not a cold and barren wasteland of snow and tundra for 12 months a year. But I cannot stress to you how that's how every Southern school talks about Minnesota. Now, Minnesota can then show videos and whatnot, but to be able to then get them up here in the summer, when, as we've seen, it's a very nice place to be, and get them on Lake Minnetonka, get them to the Mall of America, get them across to the pro sports venues, which Fleck and his staff do, and show them, oh, by the way, this is actually a pretty nice place to be, and it's not snowing 12 months a year.
Right.
I know we all know that as folks who have grown up or been in Minnesota for a long stretch of time. But for the Gopher football staff to be able to show them that, I know Jerry Kill's staff has told me for years, wherever they are at their next destination, they wish they could have had this opportunity because, to Chip's point, they would have to bring them up in the fall or in the winter when it's obviously colder, there could be snow, but to show them that it gets very hot and it gets to be a 4-season state is very important.
Let's sneak one more talk back in before we pause.
Hey, guys. Craig from
There we go. Buffering. Did we pay the internet bill?
Craig from Sartell here. question. I don't follow the college recruiting scene that closely. Just curious if there are any unwritten rules once you do get a commitment. Yeah, you can decommit, but is there any unwritten rules for these other schools? Do they back off, or do they still continue to recruit actively those athletes that have committed somewhere else? Thanks.
Thank you, Craig from Sartell. Burnsy, it's a gentleman's agreement, right? Once you get a commitment, I guess we lost this one.
I think whether it's Minnesota, whether it's North Dakota State, whether it's Minnesota Duluth, I can go down into the MIAC schools. I think many of those college coaches would tell me, and then I will tell the listener, they tell you this is when it actually starts to get interesting.
Right. Well, along those lines, the Gophers just flipped a quarterback who had committed to Boston College, right, for 2027.
Correct.
He was already committed to a school, and now he's committed to the Gophers.
These are all handshake agreements until they get to the dotted line in December, and even then we've talked about the portal, but there is no love lost in terms of just because he has given his verbal commitment to a school doesn't stop other schools from trying to still recruit him. Now, that is up to the parents or the guardian or the kid himself if they want to continue to receive those text messages and phone calls. And you always can tell whatever the XYZ coach is, hey, I'm committed here. If something changes, I'll let you know, but please stop. Just don't bother me anymore.
Right.
But in this day and age, it is very interesting. So the answer to that one, Chipper, is an easy, it's been that way for a very long time, but there are no unwritten rules in that regard.
Yeah, the work begins after the commitment. That's when you have to really start recruiting.
Correct.
All right, let's do one more pause. If you'd like to get a talk back in or a text, we'll try to get to as many as we can. When we come back, I do want to talk about a couple of current day Gophers, or at least Gophers for the upcoming season. We got a lot of texts about people that are wanting, depth charts and season. There's plenty of time for all that, right? Burnsy will tell us who he thinks the first 5 offensive linemen will be when they play against, is it Buffalo on a Thursday night?
How dare you? We're about 9 weeks away from you roaming the sidelines.
Late August, it'll be 112 degrees on Fox that Thursday night during the State Fair. We got plenty of time to get into all that. We're going to keep it a little bit more generic and more topical in terms of the recruiting stuff and just the house settlement stuff like we talked about, but we'll try to burn through as many talkbacks and texts as we can get to in our final 15 minutes or so with these guys.
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money you saw in my...
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.
Bonus Box is back on KFAN. We have 9 chances for you to win $1,000 every weekday. That's every hour from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. 10 keywords and learn more. Head to KFAN.com. Bonus Box is presented by BigDeck.com.
Text and talk back going to bring us back here. It's Guardsy in for Barreiro today. Lou Nanny joins for the top 5 at 5 and the 5 o'clock hour. He's already here. He walked in with our 4 o'clock in-studio guests, Ryan Burns and Chip Scoggins from the Pair and a Spare podcast. Everybody's favorite college football podcast, available wherever you get them. I suggest a free iHeartRadio app. Another 10 minutes or so with these guys. Jason's tweet and then a talk back about the same topic. Do you think the offense will stay as imaginative as last year with Drake Lindsay as the quarterback? They made big steps last year with becoming a modern offense. Hope we don't go back to a run-only offense. That dovetails nicely with this talkback.
What's up, fellas? It's Aaron from Little Canada. I might go Tommy Olson on the bit. I just need to know, because I'm not as up-to-date with my Gophers roster. How's the quarterback position looking? Because if we got somebody like Max Brosmer, maybe even a little bit more athletic, I don't see why we couldn't be the next Indiana. Maybe not go undefeated or whatever they were, but I don't see a loss in the schedule.
That is Tommy Olson. Yeah. Little Canada or Matamita, I'm not sure. With the first part first, you coined this phrase modern offense, Chip, a couple of years ago on the Pair and a Spare pod. They did it last year. I mean, Brosmer's on the Vikings right now. They used an NFL quarterback and used him well. I know what you hope for.
Yeah,
How optimistic are you?
I remember the post-game Wisconsin where PJ and I had a
heart-to-heart,
a fun exchange. I thought it was a fun exchange.
It was.
Where I asked him about, you changed. PJ, you changed. Look at you threw the ball this year. And he said I had to. He said, Chip, if you had Muhammad Ibrahim, you would have ran the ball as much as I did. I don't know if I would agree with that, but he said basically they had a generational, what he thought, workhorse running back, and he was going to stick with that. I'm glad he opened it up. I'm glad he changed. I'm glad he trusted Greg Harbaugh, his offense coordinator, to be more creative, to trust in the passing game. And we saw the benefits from that. So I'm I don't know if I'm optimistic, but hopeful that Drake Lindsey can continue and earn the trust that Max Brosmer did, that he can show the ability to process the game and control the game the way that Max did, because that was his specialty. That's what he was really good at. When you look at Drake, physically he has everything that we can measure, right, in terms of height, size, arm strength, all that. What you don't know is when the game starts happening, is he going to be able to process the game and react quickly and think quickly and make those kind of decisions in the way that Max did.
Burnsy, tell us about young Drake Lindsey from Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yeah, well, that's where last season, to Chip's point, that Max Brosmer broke, I believe it was the all-time completions record from former guest on this podcast, Adam Weber, the Mounds View native himself. Now, do I think that they're going to throw as much as they did last fall? This fall with an inexperienced quarterback, I would be a little doubtful in that. Now, they also struggled to run the football last year, which is the other part of this.
Good point.
Is you didn't know what you were getting from the running game in any given week. You saw weeks like against Illinois where they really could run the ball well, or even USC, and then the next week they would turn around and really struggle to run the football. So the hope would be Darius Taylor coming back, a kind of reworked offensive line is able to take some of the pressure off. Now, that being said, you also have a redshirt freshman quarterback starting for the first time, and he's never started a game before. Now, from game 1 until game 13, do I anticipate him getting better? Yes, but to Chip's point, I mean, we've all seen a lot of Gopher quarterbacks look good in practice, and then when the lights turn on Saturday or Thursday night against Buffalo, you don't really expect, or you don't really know what to expect. Now, I'm more bullish on Drake Lindsey than many people. Now, I know a lot of listeners are probably thinking, well, we just heard this same story 2-3 years ago with Ethan Kaliakmanis. Well, I think Ethan has kind of written his own story with now starting at 2 different Big Ten schools and still having about a 52% completion percentage. He's got all the arm talent in the world, but the consistency, both, I think, on and off the field for him isn't there. And that's where the other half of what Brosmer was brought in to do last year was mentor Drake Lindsey. And so we're going to find out come Buffalo through the bowl game, how good can Drake be, how quickly, because they're very bullish on him behind the scenes. But I'm very cognizant to say, boys, he's a redshirt freshman who's never started a game, and there's going to be some very low lows, just like there's going to be some high highs that give you glimmers of hope.
It also took PJ a minute or two to fully trust Max.
For sure.
I thought, right? I don't remember which game it was, but all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, Max is running this show now. It was almost like Brett Favre and Brad Childress in 06, right? Yeah. You were on the beat then, right?
Yeah.
On the Vikings beat. Like, it took Greg Lewis.
The first 2 games we were talking about Favre being a game manager.
Yes, and then all of a sudden he was head coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterback. Now, I'm not saying PJ's ever going to get to that far, but I do think it took a little while, and then all of a sudden everybody figured out, oh, this is Max's team for sure.
Well, and I think to what Ryan said, I think they're going to be able to run the ball better. They've brought in 1,900 running backs.
They also lost 1,900 running backs.
But they also... There's a lot of question marks with the offensive line.
Yeah.
How good is that group? There's so many new faces.
He's not there anymore. Yeah, Quinn Carroll's not there anymore.
Correct. It's not to say that they can't play at a high level. It's just we don't know. A lot of unproven guys there, and they haven't played together. And so we have to see how that group comes together.
On the topic of the Tommy Olson talkback about the losses on the schedule, we've touched on this a couple times on the pod, but I'm just going to give you the home schedule for this season, which starts August 28th, a Thursday night, against Buffalo. Northwestern State, Rutgers, Purdue, Nebraska on a Friday night, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. Did I miss anybody? I don't think I missed any home games there.
Yeah, their hard games are all definitely on the road, for sure.
That's an inviting home schedule. And I would say, if you're a fan who likes to travel, a very enticing road schedule. Ridiculous.
In terms of great games to go, great places to go.
Cal Berkeley, Columbus, Wrigley Field, where they're playing Northwestern.
And Oregon.
Yeah. And Iowa City, which can be a fun town.
And then next year, Chip's already told me during the break here, he already booked his sailboat for sailgating out at Washington next summer.
Yeah.
I think it's next October. You already booked it for there?
Why wouldn't we?
But that home schedule, to your point, is going to dictate what this team is going to be, because Cal isn't very good. They've been absolutely decimated. This isn't Javid Best coming into
Aaron Rodgers,
coming into TCF Bank Stadium at the time. It's a very different. I mean, to Chip's point, everything on the road is very difficult, and we don't even know what Wisconsin will be at the end of that schedule, because they play one of the most difficult schedules in all of college football compared to Minnesota. Now, it's how do you do in those toss-up games, the ones like Nebraska, Michigan State, Rutgers. Now, you get a bye week to prepare for Rutgers, and I think last year, I think if you put some truth serum in PJ Fleck, I think he would tell you they got a little spun up before that game with all the different connections between that staff and this staff and Athan. Now, Athan's got to come back to Minnesota, and you still...
Gophers should have had 6 interceptions in the first half of that game, too. Yeah. That game really bothers me. The best part of that game, as we talked about last night, was me singing Shabuzi in the press box before the game.
Me learning that you love bar song.
Well, how can I not? I think that makes me just a normal person. I think the kids will tell you,
it's a bop. It's not a banger. It's a bop. It's a good song. Yeah. I'll tell you that as the resident 32-year-old here, but that home schedule is going to dictate whether they're going to be playing in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, or whether we're going to be down in Florida, or if things obviously have a 95th percentile outcome, that November is going to be really one that Wrigley Field game against Northwestern will be an interesting one too.
Well, we talked about this on the podcast before, and it's sort of what the caller or the emailer said earlier about how do you define a season. I think there's fewer of the tiers in the Big Ten now than what we're used to. It used to be maybe 3 or 4 tiers, like great teams, really good teams, mediocre, really bad. I think there's a bunch of teams that are lumped together. And guess what? They're probably looking at Minnesota as, well, that's a game you got to win. That's a coin toss you got to win. Just as Minnesota's fans are looking at these other games. And you can go down the list. And last year we felt like there was 8 of those coin flip games, which you don't know going into a season, but that's how it feels. But I think there's a lot of those. And if you maximize your schedule and you maximize those games, that's going to differentiate between a average season, a pretty good season, and a really good season.
Well, it's the one possession games where I hear it all the time from fans. What has to happen for the Gophers to have a 2019 type of season? Well, what made that 2019 team so good was they were amazing in one possession games.
Correct.
I'll also remind everyone, I think we view that season through what it was October and November. They were not very good in September.
They avoided
from the South Dakota State game to the Fresno State game, the Georgia Southern third and 30.
Yeah, Demetrius Douglas.
Like if you were to have told us at the time that team was going to win 10 games, I think we would have all looked at you and said, "In what world?" But in that season, I believe they were 6-1 in one possession games. Last year, they were 3-5. Then North Carolina, the messiest and most sloppy game of the PJ Fleck tenure, they should have had that one. The Rutgers fourth quarter should have had that one. Now, in that same breath, you also can say, well, they closed it out against USC, and USC can say, well,
we blew that one. USC
or UCLA or even Illinois last year, which I think that Illinois win is one that people are going to look back at, because Minnesota was number 1, the only team to beat Illinois in Champaign last year, and that was a good Illinois team.
Yeah.
And Minnesota didn't play above their head. They played, I'd say, a 75th percentile outcome that game. It's just when things get close, how does this team react? And we won't know until the bullets start to fly.
In our final 45 seconds, Chipper, what are you working on? Bernsey, what are you working on? What can we plug?
I have a project. I can't really say what it is.
That shocks me.
That's helpful.
Mr. Ambiguity over here.
I'm knee deep in the writing process of one of my fun enterprise things that I'm excited for.
And where can people read that?
StarTribune.com. Hopefully this summer. Doesn't have a publication date, but it's been something I've been working on for a while.
Anything secret, Bernsey, or can you just tell us what you're working on?
Yeah, we're waiting on a couple more decisions here in the recruiting landscape, with a lot of these high school kids now getting in after the official visits are all done now. It's a dead period for football recruiting across the country. So now it's decision time for mom, dad, and junior trying to figure out where they're going to go to college. So we're monitoring all that at GopherIllustrated.com. And before you know it, Guardsy, a month from now,
we'll be in Vegas.
I'll have to get you off the Baccarat table at about 4:30 at Mandalay Bay saying, hey, we got media days coming up here, so we're just about a month from this thing starting to kick off.
Yeah, you're not that far off on that whole scenario. You're not that far off. Thanks, boys. Great to see you.
Right, appreciate you.
Chip Scoggins, Ryan Burns from the Pair and a Spare podcast. Luigi Lou Nanny joins for the 5 o'clock hour. Top 5 at 5 is coming up next.
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money, you sorry
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.